My name is Rachel Campbell. On behalf of everybody at Books and Books, I want to welcome you. I never said, I want to welcome you to the Coral Gables Congregational Church. I'm in the pulpit today. But actually, what I want to do is the very first thing I have to do whenever I stand up here is thank Pastor Roy Hafner and the entire Coral Gables Congregational Church community for opening up their doors to this beautiful venue and allowing us to come in and do what we do. And so let's give them a big round. It's a really special church. So if you want to know what they're doing, just go to their website and find out. They call themselves a sanctuary for banned books. Be up here without quickly saying, welcome Kevin Kwan, right? And that brings me to someone that I also want to welcome up here, who's going to be in conversation with Kevin, and she's going to do a more formal introduction. And she's a friend of so many people here in Miami. She's lived here for many years, worked for Ocean Drive magazine. Her background is as a journalist, and then she became a writer, a novelist. And I'm excited to say that her very first novel will be debuting in July, and it's called Pink Glass Houses. It's kind of very early read, and it's gonna kind of blow the stacks off of many of the people here in Miami. It's a wonderful satirical look at PTAs, elementary schools. Just to give you an idea, I'm going to read you a little blurb that Jennifer Close, the best-selling author of Marrying the Kitchens, wrote about Pink Glass Houses, the most delicious, hilarious page-turner of the year. This book will transport you to the world of Sunset Academy, full of fabulously wealthy supermoms, social climbers, and a PTA to die for. It's a little foreshadowing. Pink Glass Houses is a perfect gift of a novel, sharply observed, juicy, and full of heart. Once you pick it up, you won't be able to stop. And the good news is this is followed by Ash's second novel, which will be out next summer. So please give a warm, warm welcome to
Thank you, Mitchell. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's an honor for me to share the stage with Kevin Kwan, New York Times bestselling author of the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy, and here to celebrate. That definitely deserves applause. And here to celebrate his fantastic new book, Lies and Weddings. If you haven't read it yet, you're in for a treat. It is propulsive, witty, you will be racing to the end. As an author, it's one of those books where I had to stop on every page and say, wow, how did you do this? Congratulations, Kevin.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here tonight. What a beautiful space. What a beautiful audience. It's amazing to be back in Miami. And,
so happy to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm coasting on zero sleep. Up since 3, came here from Canada, so this is brought by Coca-Cola tonight. I'm not going to be, you'll forgive me. Yeah, so lovely to be here.
Lies and Weddings is a sweeping family saga that takes us on a world tour of luxury and excess, with stops along the way at a 5-star hotel in Hong Kong, a nobleman's estate in the United Kingdom, a volcano in Hawaii, a wedding aboard a hot air balloon in Marrakesh, and some of the most exclusive nightclubs in Los Angeles. We will meet the distinguished Gresham family, whose patriarch is an English nobleman with a grand estate, and whose matriarch is a former Hong Kong supermodel with an eye on expanding her empire in the age-old way of marrying off her children well.
But there's a twist.
With a twist.
Spoiler alert.
I have so much to say about what ensues, but for those of you who haven't read it, Kevin, can you tell us a little bit more about this book?
Wow, where to begin? That was a beautiful introduction, thank you. This was, to me, the English novel. So I began this new series with Sex and Vanity, my 2020 book, which I called the Cities Trilogy. And so that first book, Sex and Vanity, was very much inspired by New York and Capri. And this one, as it turns out, is my Valentine to the Big Island of Hawaii and England and London. But I've always loved the Victorian novel. I've always loved Jane Eyre and Bronte sisters and Jane Austen and Trollope. But the classic trope of all these novels is the woman has to marry a rich man in order to have a life, really. And I wanted to upend that. I wanted to, really do the complete flip, where this time it's the guy that desperately needs the powerful, empowered, wealthy woman.
I love that, and you do it so well. I read that you visited all of the locations that I just mentioned in writing this book.
Except the LA nightclubs, I have to confess. I couldn't get in, sorry.
I was going to say, it seems pretty
Too
impossible.
exclusive for me.
Too exclusive for me too. What was that research like, and what about Hawaii really opened up the creativity for this book?
That was interesting. I was having a really tough time writing the book in the fall of 2021, and just at a certain point I even called my editor and said, I'm not going to meet the deadline, because I've been writing, I've been trying, and just nothing is really sticking. I have all these half-hearted little stories and ideas, but I'm not able to really channel them in the way that I normally do. So I kind of, failed, gave up, and decided to join some friends for New Year's in Hawaii on the Big Island.
Put the book aside.
I really put the book aside, because I was trying and it wasn't working. And so the last thing you want to do is force it, right? So I went to the Big Island intending to stay 5 days, and something happened. Truly something magical happened. And that's why the book is dedicated to the goddess Pele. Pele is one of the most important deities in the Hawaiian Islands. And she also represents the volcano. She's got that volcanic energy, that creative energy. And so I got there, and even by day 2, was just feeling like, something is bubbling forth. Pardon the obvious cliche metaphor, but maybe it was the ocean breeze and the volcano, and just also traveling for the first time outside of America. After what we've all been through, I finally had the freedom to write again. And also, I think, the freedom to free myself from writing what I thought I was going to write.
Interesting.
That's the important thing, because I was like, okay, I'm in Hawaii, I'm inspired by this place, I'm going to start writing here. And I began writing a chapter a day, which, as a fellow author, is impossible. It's unheard of, yeah. So I just extended my trip and ended up staying 6 weeks. Week after week, I would keep extending and trying to find, it was high season, but I was trying to find little Airbnbs where I could, and I kept on moving down this one road, Waco Beach Road, which is just this beautiful residential street, one of the last oceanfront street that still is local, that isn't some huge master planned mega mansion community, and so it really, really nurtured me.
And did you take an outdoor shower?
I did not.
There's an amazing book in the book.
Yeah, but I have in the past in other beautiful outdoor showers, but a lot of imagination, but it got me going, it got the story going.
Well, your love and reverence for the island really comes through on the page. You present us with some of the most extravagant and imaginative weddings I've ever seen on a page, but as over the top and awe-inspiring as these events are, what draws us in most to weddings is the people who attend them. We all love, I'm guessing, but the hidden politics and agendas, the posturing, that's where the real story often is. How do you use weddings as a device for tension, and are you ever surprised at how your characters act at them?
I love a good wedding, but not because of the marriage. For me, weddings are about families, and you always see the dynamics come out when families reunite, really, and two families come together. times there's a dynastic match in place. A lot of times, there's ulterior motives, and it's always fun to sort of sit back and be a winning guest and see the sparks fly. So that has always been a great inspiration point. So I decided to do a whole book set at different weddings. What was part two of the question?
Are you ever surprised when you put your characters in these situations, how they end up behaving?
Constantly. Yeah, I always say, I am not in control. Once I start sketching out the characters and once they come alive on the page, I really just sit back and see what they want to do, and oftentimes they really disappoint me with their actions.
Well, we're all here for it.
Thank you. Hope you love them as much as I come to.
This is a character-driven book, and your characters are often equal parts warm and flawed. You've said that the Asian mother is a huge source of inspiration for you, and in this book, one line that stands out for me is, Chinese mothers show love through criticism. As someone who grew up with an Indian mother, I understand that all too well. Except in my case, I might add criticism and food. Tell us more about the Asian mothers in your own family and how they've inspired you in your creative process.
Well, I don't have an Asian mother, so I wouldn't be able to help you there. Kidding.
But what is it about the Asian matriarch that informs your writing?
It's interesting, right? Because I grew up in a multi-generational household. So not only did I see my own mother in action, I really got to see my grandmother and what she did to completely screw up her children. So it was, from birth I could see the dynamic happening, and it was just fascinating to watch. And it's only after you leave the place that you truly get to understand what has happened. So they were, people are often think that Asia is a chauvinistic place and that the men rule. But from my experience, it's truly the women who rule. The women rule by ruling the households. The men might go out and they might be the ones that first make the fortune and stuff like that. But when they come home, they really submit to the wives, and to the mothers. And so it's kind of like interesting to see, kind of like Italian culture, I find. And I don't know if that's the case with Indian culture as well. But certainly in my family,
I would say it is.
that was certainly the case. So I started young, seeing, like I said, how my grandmother ruled the household, and even ruled my parents. And then my parents were actually quite different. I don't have a dragon mother at all. People often think the mothers here are really based on mine, and my mom is a complete outlier. She's really her own person, but she's not Arabella or like these people.
Countess Arabella is a dragon mother for the ages.
She truly is, yeah.
Your books and their adaptations have made huge strides in changing how the world sees Asian and Pacific Islanders. We owe you a huge debt of gratitude for that, for what you've done for us in terms of representation, for giving us these gorgeous, nuanced, and aspirational characters. In Lies and Weddings, you're doing this for mixed-race people like me, Papas. What did representation look like in literature for you growing up? And was it all important for you to change that narrative?
Thanks for the question. I think the first true writer that spoke to me, when I took a book out from bookshelf, Amy Tom. I think she was the first one to really look at the issues of Asian Americans in a contemporary way. So she was hugely influential. I remember reading The Joy Club and just feeling seen for the first time, And then I went to the bookstore to look for more like that, and there was nothing. Literally, it was her and in a slightly earlier generation, Maxine Kong Kingston. She was grappling with a whole different set of issues, but they were pretty much just the only two out there. And so I really sought to create books that really depicted people like me, contemporary Asians, Asian Americans, Asian immigrants, grappling with life in the East and West.
Were you at all surprised with how the mainstream has embraced your stories and your characters?
Totally stunned. even today, like it's really hard to believe that anyone has read a single one of my books. So, I know you've all been paid to be here. So, thank you. It's beyond your wildest dreams. And I think you probably feel the same way too, right? Like, you work on something, it's not glamorous, you're just really in a room, just spitballing ideas, and then you send it out in the world. You really don't know who's going to connect to it.
I don't know why anyone would, to your point.
Yeah.
It is the most unbelievable thing.
And it's really special when people do, come embrace your world and spend a few hours, wanting to sort of be in your world. So I really see that it's really such a privilege when anyone does that.
You write about what you call the comedy of pretension, which I think is a brilliant way to describe satire, and you do it so well. One of my favorite satirical moments of thousands in this book is when a certain billionaire's son, who dropped out of Miami's FIU and lives in an incredibly over-the-top mansion in Los Angeles, commissions a sculpture of himself nude in the style of Michelangelo's David. It's brilliant. I wonder, what are some of your favorite satirical details, and are any of them true?
I would say that most of the details in these books, and in this book in particular, are true. In many cases I tweaked them slightly so that they're not recognizable. So I did need someone who did commission, a sculpture of themselves, will remain genderless also. But I changed it slightly so they're not identifiable.
I love that one is real.
Yeah, the art world has been overtaken by the 1%, right? And so, but that's always been the case. The popes were commissioning artworks after effigies for themselves. So there's a long tradition of the crazy rich intersecting with artists and getting what they want. I mean, I'm sure some of you saw last week when Prince Charles unveiled his latest portrait.
Yeah, what did you think of that?
I love it. But I was thinking of Game of Thrones. The Red Wedding. I was like, wow, he went there. Does he really know what this is symbolic for?
Dan, I wonder, and I can't say, I wonder if the painter, how he felt about King Charles seeing that, if it was a subtle dig in any way.
So far he hasn't said, but I know Camilla said to him, "You got him." So she loved it.
Two of her main love interests, Eden and Rufus, there's one scene where they're driving to Prada Marfa, the site-specific art installation on a desolate road in Texas. And while they're there, they see a drone hunting border crossers in the distance. That juxtaposition feels very intentional. Can you tell us about the significance of that moment and what it meant for the characters?
This book and this new series of books are about Asians outside of Asia. The first trilogy I wrote was about Asians in Asia, but as you know, we move, we immigrate. Your parents, my parents. And so I always kind of look at, for me, immigration has been a great thing, right? And then I see how different countries grapple with it. And it's nowhere more stark than in Marfa. And it really was not a clever juxtaposition. It's what I saw when I went there. Here you are on a completely, one of the most desolate roads you'll ever be on. There's nothing for miles to see except a two-lane, blacktop highway. And there's just literally tumbleweeds on the ground. And the land is so dead, it's just gray. There's no color to it. And then suddenly in the middle of nowhere, there's a Prada boutique. And I took a picture of it, and it's in the book. That's my photograph, by the way, because it's the only way we get around doing that, right? Because it's an artistic installation by Elmson and Trackers, these amazing conceptual artists. But they replicated a whole Marfa store, got Prada store in Marfa, got Prada clothing, set it up there, and they're just letting it decay. Over the decades, but it's so so unbelievably, it's such a bold statement about where we are as a society, you know, I think. So take that what you will, but when I was there, you could see in the distance these beautiful blimps, you know, just floating in the air, and I would think, this is so beautiful. Is this part of the art installation? You know, these beautiful blimps. And I realized I was told it's not, it's Border Patrol. Because we're right there, you know. And a friend of mine actually once camped behind Prague Marfa for the night. We pulled up, looked at the installation and said to sleep behind in a sleeping bag. And he was awoken in the middle of the night by Border Patrol, shining a flashlight at him, you know. It was very surreal. So that real experience informed why I wanted to show this scene and just look at how stark the contrasts are between the have and have-nots.
And it's felt, and it is a nice relief from all the luxury and excess that some of these characters are displaying.
Exactly, yeah. And I think it's also, that whole scene and that whole part really connects the characters in a really meaningful, real way and inspires them, which is what art is supposed to do. It's really supposed to inspire you to think, think beyond yourself.
You have a signature way of introducing characters, and that is to list their educational pedigree in parentheses next to their name. So, for example, if it was me, I would say Asha Elias, Hong Kong International Discovery Bay School, Boca Raton Middle School, Boca Raton High School, University of Miami. What work does
I approve.
Not very impressive, but thank you. What kind of work does this do up front to tell us about your characters, and how do you sometimes work to subvert those expectations?
It really began with this new series, with the Sex and Vanity, because I moved to New York in 1995, and I found, I grew up in Texas, and then moving to New York, I was in this whole new world, and I found that every social event I went to, the first thing people asked was, oh, where did you go to school? People were trading schools, like they were trading business cards, and it became this game. And it wasn't even just for college. They wanted to know where you went to grade school.
You do go all the way back to primary school.
I go straight back to nursery school, because it begins there for these people. It's that important to get your kid, especially in New York, you have to sort of bribe the right, admissions officers with Omaha steaks and stuff like that, like true story. To get your kid into the right kindergarten, so they get to know the right little kids and have the right play dates and be invited to the Hamptons for the summer and stuff like that. So it begins truly early, and I just thought that would be a fun conceit to where, we're putting it all up front, but I think it became a way to really showcase who these characters were right from the start, because there is something particular about someone that is a Harvard person.
Or who
or
got kicked out of Texas.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is the billionaire with the sculpture of himself, as Michelangelo stated.
Exactly, and it's become really fun, because since then people have really done a lot of deep diving into these school biographies. I literally had someone call me up and go, what happened to this character? Why did they go from such a great school to such a shitty college? It's all intentional. And it's all part of their backstory.
It works.
So, yeah. Thank you.
I think we have some time for audience questions. Do we have a microphone we can pass around? So if anyone has a question for Kevin, please no spoilers about the book for those who haven't read it yet.
They all die.
Everyone dies, but other than that, no spoilers. You can just raise a hand and we'll point to you again. Okay, and you go first.
Welcome back to Miami. You're here in Miami in Books and Books. And Books and Books probably has the world's best collection of books on Cuba. There's one in particular that went out of print a couple of years ago that we sold really well and we really liked it. Can you guess what it might be? Book on Cuba?
I cannot guess. I have no idea.
Well, so a lot of people don't know, but you've been a photo editor for some beautiful books. Cuba Me, I think you did the Cuba Then that we've had in the store. So you're obviously talented in a multitude of artistic genres, which for average shows like us is pretty infuriating. But I'm curious, how does Kevin Kwan, the photo editor, become Kevin Kwan, the novelist, and what's the skill set that overlap that you were using in both those mediums?
Thanks for the question. I mean, Miami is such a special place to me. I don't know if most of you know this, but this is where I had my first book event for my first book, and you know, it was at Books and Books. You know, the great Mitchell Kaplan, you know, was the one that gave me a chance. And so my first actual author book is called I Was Cuba. Back in 2006, this wonderful collector came to me and said, I have these amazing photographs of Cuba, would you come look at them and see if you could help me do a book? And he badgered me for about a year. I didn't want to go look at them. And I was like, what do I know about Cuba? And I one day went to his apartment and fell in love with these. He had the largest private collection of Cuban photography outside of Cuba. And looking at it, he's discovering Cuba through his photographs. I just, in a flash, saw a story. And I said, I know how to tell the story of your collection. Will you let me? And he did. And so I just, you know, made a really quick mock-up, and it sold. Chronicle Books bought it. And we had 4 beautiful printings of the book, and a tour all through Miami and Florida, and it's, you know, so that was my previous life before, you know.
I love that your literary career started in Miami, and what a great story for us too.
Exactly, but I think, I always say, if I had tried to write my novels when I first graduated from journalism school, they would be so different. You know, I had to go through the woods and around the bend for 20 years and have all these other adventures to make me the writer that I am. So much of the visual comes into my book, so much of my training as a photographer, as a filmmaker, as an artist, informs what has come into these books, for better or for worse. So that's just how it is. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, let's talk about your movie. So, your movie shattered so many expectations. It got Short Round to go back to acting. It catapulted the careers of quite a few stars. It became a cultural icon, highest grossing romantic film in over a decade. So, what was it like to see all of that and know it came from something from your book? And when the hell are we getting number 2?
Thank you. Thanks for saying that. And I should clarify, you know, it's only partly my movie. This is really John Chu's movie, right? He's the director. He's really the genius that took my book and turned it into what it became. So, you know, full credit needs to go there. It's been incredible. I mean, I just don't know what to say beyond that, right? Like, we just wanted to make a movie that would not bomb. If it bombs, well, you know, Asians will never go back ever again. You know, and now that's 25 years, just forever. So that was the pressure, was to get it right and to do something that would perhaps survive the box office weekend. Did we think it'd be the #1 movie for 3 weeks running? And, you know, I still see it on planes. People are still watching it these days. So it's had a tremendous legs. And I just think it speaks to what people actually want these days. You know, so like, you guys are to be thanked, ultimately. You made it a hit because you want to see stuff that is not just, you know, Brad Pitt on Mars. You know?
We want to see that too, but I'd love to see that.
So, you know, ultimately, movie studios pivot to audiences. If you support it, they will make more, right? So they are trying to do a sequel. You know, we had a pandemic, we had a writer's strike, Warner Brothers got bought and sold twice. So there were delays, but through it all, the intention has been, how can we do a sequel that really does justice to the first movie? So we are doing that, and we hope to get it to you just as soon as possible.
Hello, my name is Rohan, listening from Boston. Thank you so much for sharing your time. I wanted to ask you, Amy Tan has been mentioned, in your opinion, who is another Asian author that should be read that perhaps has not received the same kind of critical acclaim you or Amy Tan, you know, has received in kind of the mainstream American media?
I don't feel like I'm really truly qualified to answer that question. There's so many great writers out there, that's the thing, that really deserve to be amplified, more and more. Off the top of my head, of course, Maxine Hopkinson, she's a legend, but Gish Jen is another amazing author. Babsi Sidwa, another. There's so many great writers out there that truly deserve a bigger platform. So I would just go looking at your favorite bookstore. Start at Books and Books. Really. Sandy Tan. I can go back and just keep naming names. Sandy Tan wrote a beautiful book called Lurkers about modern day life on one street in Los Angeles. So I can keep going, but they're out there. Look for them and tell your friends when you discover a great book by an author from a diverse background.
Thank you. I just want to mention that Lies and Weddings will certainly be utilized as a how-to manual for young men like me who want to learn the affections. How to be successful Korean our family fortunes.
Whatever works out.
Just be Rufus.
Yeah, be Rufus. I think he might be, actually.
Hi, Kevin. Just wanted to say, we adore your writing. When you say that you're surprised when people pick up your book, we pick it up before it even hits the market. Two things that I love about your writing. One is the footnotes. I love that. I think that you include the writer in sort of like an inside joke. So I just wanted to tell you that's like one of my favorite things about your writing. And the other thing is, fellow journalist, the amount of research that must go on. Every time I read one of your pages, I always have to take a pause and think back about every little detail. I wanted to ask you about that. What is your process? I'm so intrigued when you write these scenes. How does it work for you? Like, how much research? How long does it take you? Talk to me about your whole process.
It takes a really, really long time. First of all, I'm not a fast writer, which is why I only do, a book every few years, because with every page comes a lot of stress and anxiety and, and heartbreak and just, sweat. But I don't really do that much research. Yeah. It's just, there's a lot of garbage in my head, and it just works its way out onto the page. I do very little Googling, and so much of it is truly based on just the strange experiences that I've been lucky or unlucky enough to have. And I take these experiences and I just sort of try to spin gold out of mud, So that's what I do. Thank you.
Kevin, I just want to say, after Mary's question and hearing your answer, I think we're all going to need a memoir at some point to hear more of these special stories.
That's going to be way too boring. Way too boring.
Hello.
Hi.
I have my question down in case I blank out. So you mentioned previously how Hawaii was a great inspiration when writing your newest novel. And I was wondering if there was a particular trip or moment that inspired you to write the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy.
So many trips, over the years. And that's really, it's what got me going. Because I would, even after leaving Singapore when I was 11 years old, I would often be taken on trips to other parts of Asia. We had relatives everywhere. So from Bangkok to Hong Kong to Shenzhen, China to Shanghai, I really got to know Asia well over the years. And so I would come back to New York and tell my friends, who were mostly artists and writers, about the crazy time I was in Hong Kong and I got into a car and before I knew what was happening, this maid rushed in, sort of buckling me with a seatbelt, because that's what they do there. You're so bored that you don't even put on your own seatbelt. So all these little stories, I couldn't make them up truly. So they are informed so much by travel and experience, and that's really what feeds the books. And friends over the years were like, write it down, give us a book, give us a book. So I did.
Your friends were right.
Hey Kevin, you and I knew each other actually back in New York in the 90s. One of the Bethany's.
Oh my God, hey!
So yeah, I knew Kevin when he was a photo editor. I don't know where you were working at the time, but it's wonderful to see you here. I'm curious about when you, as a minority, when you write minority characters, you're writing satire, you obviously need to create these three-dimensional people who are deeply flawed. Do you ever worry, like, oh, I don't want to go too dark here. I don't want to go so negative that America, in quotes, is going to look at one of my, a fellow immigrant or a fellow minority in a negative way? Is that ever, do you ever pump the brakes because of that?
I'm conscious of that, and I think I write from my experience, and I, have to confess, I've been truly one of the lucky ones. I'm truly one of the blessed ones, right? So my immigrant experience has been so different than most. I think that's been part of my journey, with writing these books, realizing truly how lucky I was. I survived American high school, never got shoved into a locker once, and I think it helps, number one, speaking English from day one, not having that struggle with communication. Number two, I came from Singapore, which was always a very multicultural, westernized island, so I grew up with neighbors who were from New Zealand, from England, from India, across the street. So I kind of grew up in a very colorblind way, and when I came here, that didn't change, right? Everyone was everyone, and I made friends on day one of school. So the stories that I hear from other immigrant kids that come from around the world are shockingly different from mine. And so I now try to give voice to that because I was so lucky. And at the end of the day, I'm writing a comedy and satire, right? And I think it catch a lot of views of money, and I'm here to really give people a fun ride. But perhaps with little shadows here and there. The shadows are what allow us to pause and think and grow. But I'm not trying to hit people over the head with, disaster porn, But I thank you for the question. But I see it's there, and I want to give importance to it. But you have to calibrate it, I think.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, I think we have time for two more. Sorry, that's really loud. I think we have time for two more questions right here.
Yes, you said that beautiful story about Hawaii and how you lingered there for 6 weeks or 6 months. I'm not sure.
I wish it was 6 months. So only 6 weeks.
So I was wondering what you do in your leisure time to inspire yourself to write.
What leisure time?
Well, okay, can you combine your leisure time with writing, and how does that work? And also, since I have a chance, how do you write for different genders? How do you research that?
Yeah, in the rare moments where I have leisure time, I sleep. No, I go on walks, I go on hikes. I try to really engage with the artistic community of where I'm at. So I live in LA now, so I spend a lot of time going to look at art and meeting other artists, doing studio visits and trying to just encourage and inspire myself and them. So that's what I do. I find inspiration to other creative people in my leisure time. And part two of your question was, I'm sorry, what? The 3 a.m. is really
How do you write for different genders?
Yeah.
How do you think about that?
I'm not really conscious of that. I just really feel like these characters come out in different ways, and to me, they're almost genderless. They wear different costumes, they have different lengths of hair, different accessories, but I don't think of them in terms of men or women or whatever. The voices just come to me, that's all I can say.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Do you hear their voices and do they talk to you?
They very much do, and they take over. They really do, and I just let them talk,
And you're a pathologist.
And
You just
I'm truly, I say this and most people go, they think I'm crazy when I say that, or I should get medication. But the characters really do take over. And a lot of times they end up making me go down roads I don't want to go to.
Right.
I didn't intend on writing. Really, I think this is the longest book I've written. Hopefully not the most boring. But the characters really leave you, and the story changes and keeps changing. And I think that, to me, for my process, is so lovely. I'm on a journey of discovery every time I write a book.
Yeah. You really can't tell the characters what to do. Once you know them and once they're in your head, they direct.
They really take over, yeah.
here. So,
Thank you.
my friend and I were at the beach today. We were both creatives, and we were having this discussion about advice that people have given us that was dead wrong. Given earlier you shared a little bit about your process and the anxiety and the labor and sweat. I think there was a little bit of a joke about how much sweat that was. But where in this process do you ever receive advice that was just dead wrong? And where have your instincts begun to sharpen the more and more you dove into this creative process as an author?
That is an amazing question, and I don't know if I can answer it.
Try. I came all the way from New York. Try.
Dead wrong. I think mistakes really help you. I think mistakes and learning is you know, is one of those valuable things you can do. You know, I thought I was going to go work in advertising and, you know, intern at an advertising agency. That was my first real job. And, you know, one day the vice president wanted to see me, and I thought, oh, here's my chance. I'm going to get offered a job. And I walked in there, and she fired me. Yeah. And that was an awakening, you know, and then moving to New York and bad advice given to me. But I think of the bad choices I personally made and the failures that I had, and they all added up and truly, I think, helped enrich me and my wisdom in doing so.
Is that all we have time for?
I'll give you one more question.
Okay.
That's okay.
Let's not end on failure.
Great. My name is Anne. Thank you for being here. And I've had the opportunity to live in Asia and visit. And also, we're at the intersection of South America. And I have lots of Latin American friends. And I just really think that your points, for me, are global. The movie, for me, it struck me, it could have happened in a country or a big city in South America. So for me, it's more than Asian, it's global. That's all.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. I feel that when you're more specific to yourself and your truth and your story, that's what connects people, right? And so I hear that from readers all over the world, you know, who are like, oh my God, will you please write about crazy rich Pakistanis? Because, you know, like, your characters are just like my uncle or like my cousin and this and that. And so, you know, and that's why we're all here today, because, you know, these stories are all universal. I just thought of an answer for you, by the way. Sorry, as that all came, because we're talking movies and, you know, what connects us all. And so one of the very first people that was interested in acquiring Crazy Rich Asians, the movie, was a really famous, very powerful producer. And this person said, hey, I will make your movie, but you gotta change Rachel Chu into a white girl. It's the only way it's gonna work. And so I took that as bad advice and I didn't listen.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
That's been great. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin's going to sing and sign some books. Please, he's not going to tell you to do it, but I'm going to. Buy Lies and Weddings. It is phenomenal. You're going to love it. Get a little guidebook. You can take a bookmark. And we'll see you back there.
Thank you both. Nice job, Kevin. One more round of applause. Thank you. For the book signing, as Ashley said, we'll be right there.